The summer evening air hung heavy with humidity as the sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks over Westlake City Park. Groups of young people dotted the green spaces, some playing frisbee, others sitting in circles on blankets, enjoying the last few hours of weekend freedom before Monday arrived. Among them was Sophia Chen, a 19-year-old sophomore at Westlake Community College, who had organized a small gathering to celebrate her roommate Lucia's birthday. Sophia had spent the entire day preparing. She'd baked Lucia's favorite lemon cake, decorated their spot with fairy lights strung between the trees, and invited their closest friends. The group of 8 sat in a circle, music playing softly from a portable speaker, sharing stories and laughing as the evening progressed. None of them were drinking alcohol. Sophia had been adamant about that since the park had strict rules and several of their friends were under 21. "Make a wish," Sophia said, as Lucia closed her eyes and blew out the small candles on the cake. Everyone clapped and cheered. "I wish we could do this every weekend," Lucia said after opening her eyes, breaking the supposed rule about not revealing wishes. "You're not supposed to say it out loud," teased their friend Haley. "Now it won't come true." "Some rules are meant to be broken," Lucia replied with a laugh. It was just past 9 o'clock when 2 police cruisers pulled up alongside the park's main path. Someone had called in a noise complaint about rowdy teenagers possibly drinking in the park. Officer James Mercer, a 34-year-old patrol officer who had been with the Westlake Police Department for 6 years, stepped out of his vehicle with his partner, Officer Rebecca Torres. Sophia noticed the police first. "Guys, heads up," she said quietly, nodding toward the approaching officers. The group immediately lowered the volume of their music. Officer Mercer approached with a swagger in his step, thumbs hooked into his belt loops. Officer Torres followed a few steps behind, her expression more neutral and professional. "Evening, folks," Officer Mercer called out, his voice carrying across the grass. "We got a call about some noise and possible underage drinking." Sophia stood up, brushing grass from her jeans. "Hello, officers. We're just celebrating a birthday. We've kept the music low and nobody's drinking alcohol." Officer Mercer's eyes scanned the group, then settled back on Sophia. There was something in his gaze that made her instantly uncomfortable, a look that felt more like he was sizing her up than assessing the situation. "We'll need to see some ID from everyone," he said, his tone shifting to something that felt unnecessarily authoritative. "Can't be too careful these days." As the group began reaching for wallets and purses, Officer Torres moved toward the other side of the circle, handling the process efficiently and respectfully. Officer Mercer, however, remained focused on Sophia. "Let's start with you," he said, gesturing for her to step aside from the group. Sophia hesitated but complied, walking a few feet away and handing over her driver's license. She could feel her heart beating faster, not because she had done anything wrong, but because something about Officer Mercer's demeanor felt off. He examined her ID with exaggerated care, glancing between the card and her face several times. "Sophia Chen," he said, drawing out each syllable of her name. 20 years old next month, huh?" "Yes, sir," she replied, keeping her voice steady despite her growing discomfort. Officer Mercer handed back her ID but didn't step away. Instead, he moved closer, invading her personal space. "You know," he said, lowering his voice so only she could hear, "you're way too pretty to be hanging out in a park on a Saturday night." Sophia stiffened, crossing her arms across her chest. "We're just celebrating my friend's birthday, officer." Sure, he said, his eyes traveling up and down her body in a way that made her skin crawl. "But I've been doing this job long enough to know when someone's been drinking." "I haven't been drinking," Sophia stated firmly, fighting to keep her voice from shaking. "None of us have." Her friends had begun to notice the interaction. Lucia stood up, clearly concerned, but Officer Torres gestured for her to remain seated as she continued checking IDs. "You know what?" Officer Mercer said, stepping even closer to Sophia. "I have a foolproof way of checking." Before Sophia could react or move away, Officer Mercer leaned in and, in a motion that seemed to happen both in slow motion and far too quickly, ran his tongue across her cheek from jawline to temple. Shock froze Sophia in place. Her mind couldn't process what had just happened. It was so unexpected, so completely beyond the realm of normal behavior, that for a moment, she wondered if she had imagined it. But the wet trail on her face, Cooling in the evening air told her it had been real. Horrifyingly real. Officer Mercer said with a smirk, as if he had just performed a standard procedure. No alcohol. Guess you were telling the truth. The violation of the moment crashed over Sophia in a wave. She stumbled backward, wiping at her face with her sleeve, her breath coming in short gasps. "What is wrong with you?" she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. By now, her friends had noticed something was wrong. Devon, who had been sitting closest to where Sophia stood with the officer, had seen what happened and jumped to his feet. "Hey!" he shouted, pulling out his phone. "What did you just do?" Officer Mercer turned to him, his hand moving to rest on his belt near his taser. "Sit back down, kid. This doesn't concern you." But Devon had already started recording. "I saw what you did," he said, his voice shaking with anger. "That's assault." The commotion drew the attention of everyone in the circle, as well as Officer Torres, who had been checking IDs on the other side of the group. She looked up, confused by the sudden tension. "What's going on?" she asked, moving quickly toward her partner and Sophia. Lucia rushed to Sophia's side, putting an arm around her shoulders. Sophia was trembling now, tears beginning to stream down her face as the shock gave way to humiliation and anger. "He licked her face," Devon said, still recording. "Your partner licked her face and said he was checking if she'd been drinking." Officer Torres's expression shifted from confusion to horror as she processed what she was hearing. She looked at Sophia, whose tears and the way she was frantically wiping at her cheek confirmed the accusation. "Officer Mercer," she said sharply, "step back right now." Instead of complying, Officer Mercer laughed dismissively. "Oh, come on, I was just messing around. These kids need to lighten up." By now, several other friends had their phones out recording the encounter. People from nearby groups in the park had started to notice the commotion and were watching with concern. "I said step back," Officer Torres repeated, her voice harder this time. She reached for her radio. "I'm calling Sergeant Walsh." Officer Mercer's smirk faltered as he seemed to realize belatedly that his actions might have consequences. "It was a joke, Torres. Don't make this into something it's not." But Officer Torres was already speaking into her radio, requesting their supervisor to come to their location immediately due to an incident involving Officer Mercer. Sophia, still in Lucia's protective embrace, found her voice again. "I want to file a complaint," she said, her words coming out between shaky breaths. "What he did wasn't just inappropriate, it was disgusting and humiliating." Devon moved closer, showing Sophia his phone. "I got it all on video," he assured her, from the moment he leaned in. "It's clear what he did." Other park visitors had begun to approach, asking if everything was okay. A middle-aged couple who had been walking their dog offered to stay as witnesses. "We saw what happened from over there," the woman said, pointing to the path. "It was completely unprofessional and inappropriate behavior from an officer." Officer Mercer's face had turned red, not with shame, but with anger. "You're all blowing this way out of proportion," he snapped. "It was nothing. It wasn't nothing to me," Sophia said, finding strength in the support surrounding her. "You abused your authority and assaulted me." Officer Torres had positioned herself between Mercer and the group. "Officer Mercer, return to your vehicle and wait there," she ordered, her tone leaving no room for argument. For a moment it seemed like he might refuse, but the sound of another police car approaching, likely their supervisor, seemed to change his mind. With a final glare at Sophia and her friends, he turned and stalked back to his cruiser. Officer Torres turned to Sophia, her expression a mix of professional concern and personal empathy. "Miss, I want to apologize for what happened. That behavior is completely unacceptable and doesn't represent our department or what we stand for." Sergeant Walsh arrived minutes later, quickly assessing the situation. After a brief conversation with Officer Torres and viewing the videos that Devon and others had recorded, he approached Sophia with respect and concern. "Miss Chen, I want you to know we're taking this very seriously," he said. "Officer Mercer will be placed on administrative leave immediately, pending an investigation. I'd like you to come to the station to file a formal complaint, but I can assure you that based on what I've seen and heard, there will be serious consequences for this behavior." As Sophia nodded, still processing everything that had happened, she felt a strange mix of emotions. Violation and anger, but also a growing sense of resolve. What had happened to her wasn't just about one bad officer. It was about power, respect, and accountability. "I'll file the complaint," she said firmly, "and I want to make sure this never happens to anyone else." Little did she know that by the next morning, the videos would spread across social media, sparking outrage and calls for action. That would ensure Officer Mercer's career in law enforcement would end as swiftly and definitively as it should. The ride to the police station felt longer than the 15 minutes it actually took. Sophia sat in the back of Sergeant Walsh's police cruiser, with Lucia beside her holding her hand. The sergeant had offered to let a friend accompany her for support, and Lucia had immediately volunteered. Devin and their other friends promised to meet them at the station after packing up the birthday celebration that had turned into something so unexpected. Sophia stared out the window, watching the streetlights blur past. The sensation of Officer Mercer's tongue on her face still lingered, no matter how many times she'd wiped at her cheek. She felt violated, angry, and somehow guilty all at once, though she knew she had done nothing wrong. "Are you okay?" Lucia whispered, squeezing her hand. Sophia tried to smile but couldn't quite manage it. "I just keep thinking about how fast it happened. One minute we were having a perfect evening, and the next—" She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Sergeant Walsh glanced at them in the rearview mirror, his eyes kind but serious. "Miss Chen, I want you to know that what happened tonight is not standard procedure. Not even close. Officer Mercer's actions were completely inappropriate and against everything we train our officers to do. Then why did he think he could get away with it?" Sophia asked, her voice stronger than she expected. "He didn't even try to hide what he was doing." The sergeant's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "That's a fair question, and part of what we need to find out in the investigation." When they arrived at the station, Sophia was surprised by how bright the lights were inside. Somehow she'd always imagined police stations to be dimly lit, like in the crime shows her dad watched. Instead, the fluorescent lighting was almost harsh, making everything feel more exposed and real. Sergeant Walsh led them to a small room with a table and several chairs. "This is one of our interview rooms," he explained. "I know it's not the most comfortable place, but it's private. Officer Torres will be joining us to take your statement." As if on cue, Officer Torres appeared in the doorway. She had changed out of her uniform into plain clothes, jeans and a simple blue blouse, though her badge still hung from a chain around her neck. Her face showed signs of stress, but her eyes were determined. "Miss Chen," she said, taking a seat across from Sophia, "I want to personally apologize again for my partner's behavior. There's no excuse for what he did." Sophia nodded, appreciating the sincerity in the officer's voice. "Thank you, but I want to know what happens next. Will he really face consequences, or will this just go away?" Officer Torres and Sergeant Walsh exchanged a look that Sophia couldn't quite interpret. "The videos make this pretty clear-cut," Sergeant Walsh said finally. "Several witnesses captured what happened. Based on what I've seen, Officer Mercer has already been placed on administrative leave, effective immediately. But we need your statement to proceed with the formal investigation." Officer Torres set up a small recorder on the table. "We'll record your statement if that's okay. I'll need you to go through exactly what happened from the beginning." For the next hour, Sophia recounted every detail she could remember, from the birthday celebration in the park to Officer Mercer's inappropriate comments and, finally, the shocking moment when he licked her face. Talking about it was difficult, but with each word she felt a little of her power returning. Lucia sat beside her the whole time, a steady presence offering silent support. When she finished, Officer Torres stopped the recorder. "Thank you, Sophia. I know that wasn't easy. What about the videos?" Sophia asked. "Devin and at least 2 others recorded what happened. We've already collected copies from your friends who arrived earlier," Sergeant Walsh explained. "They're waiting in the lobby, by the way, and we've been made aware that at least 1 video has already been posted online." Sophia felt a jolt of surprise. "Online already?" Lucia pulled out her phone. "I just checked. Devin's video has over 5,000 views on Instagram, and it's being shared on Twitter too. People are really angry about what happened to you. The news was both shocking and oddly comforting. People cared. They saw what had happened as wrong." A knock on the door interrupted them. A woman in a sharp pantsuit entered, her expression professionally concerned. "I'm Captain Rivera," she introduced herself. "I'm the head of internal affairs for the department. I wanted to meet with you personally, Miss Chen, to assure you that we're taking this incident extremely seriously." Captain Rivera sat down, placing a folder on the table. Officer Mercer is currently at home. He's been ordered not to discuss this case with anyone, and his badge and gun have been temporarily confiscated while we investigate. Based on the preliminary evidence, I've already scheduled an emergency meeting with the chief for first thing tomorrow morning. Sophia felt a wave of relief wash over her. They were taking her seriously. So what happens now? Now, Captain Rivera said gently, you go home and try to get some rest. We have your contact information and we'll keep you updated on the investigation. The department will also provide resources for counseling services if you feel you need them. And Officer Mercer? Sophia pressed. Will he be fired? Captain Rivera's expression was carefully neutral, but her eyes were determined. I can't make promises about the outcome of an investigation that's just beginning, but I can tell you that in my 20 years with this department, I've never seen such a clear-cut case of misconduct. The chief has zero tolerance for this kind of behavior. By the time they finished at the station, it was nearly midnight. Sophia felt exhausted, as if the evening had drained every ounce of energy from her body. Devin and their other friends were waiting in the lobby, surrounding her with support as soon as she emerged from the interview room. How are you holding up? Devin asked, his face etched with concern. I'm okay, Sophia said, and was surprised to find she meant it. Tired, but okay. Everyone's talking about what happened, Haley said, showing Sophia her phone. Devin's video has gone viral. There are news outlets asking to use the footage. Sophia looked at the screen, seeing herself in that horrible moment when Officer Mercer invaded her space. It was strange seeing it from the outside. How clearly wrong it was, how obviously she had been trapped in that moment with nowhere to go. The comments below the video were filled with outrage on her behalf. My mom said we should talk to a lawyer, Lucia suggested as they walked out to the parking lot. Not just for the police investigation, but to protect your rights. Sophia nodded, too tired to think about that now. Tomorrow. I'll figure it out tomorrow. Devin offered to drive Sophia and Lucia back to their apartment. As they pulled away from the police station, Sophia looked back at the building, its windows still brightly lit against the night sky. Something had shifted inside her during those hours. The humiliation was still there, but it was being crowded out by a growing sense of determination. Back at their apartment, Lucia made tea while Sophia took the longest shower of her life, scrubbing her face repeatedly even though she knew nothing physical remained of Officer Mercer's violation. When she emerged, her phone was buzzing with notifications, messages from family and friends who had seen the video, news alerts mentioning the police misconduct incident, and even a few interview requests from local reporters. You don't have to deal with any of that tonight, Lucia said firmly, taking the phone from Sophia's hands and placing it face down on the coffee table. Right now you just need to rest. But sleep didn't come easily. Sophia lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the evening. Not just the horrible moment with Officer Mercer, but what came after. The immediate support from her friends, Officer Torres stepping in, the seriousness with which the department seemed to be taking her complaint. There was something empowering in that response. Something that helped balance out the violation she had experienced. Her phone buzzed again from the nightstand where she'd eventually retrieved it. It was a text from her mother who lived 2 states away. Just saw the news. Calling you first thing tomorrow. So proud of you for standing up for yourself. Love you. Sophia read the message twice, feeling tears well up in her eyes. Her mother had always taught her to speak up when something was wrong, but she'd never imagined having to put that lesson into practice in such a public way. Another text came through. This one from Devin. Just checking if you're okay. The video hit 50,000 views. People are demanding the officer be fired. You're not alone in this. She typed back a quick thank you. Trying to sleep now but doing okay. And put the phone back down. As exhausted as she was, Sophia's mind kept working, thinking about what would happen next. Would Officer Mercer really lose his job? Would there be a hearing? Would she have to testify? The questions swirled in her mind, but instead of feeling overwhelmed, she felt strangely centered. Whatever came next, she would face it. Just before sleep finally claimed her, Sophia had a realization that would shape the days to come. What had happened to her wasn't just about one bad officer or one awful moment. It was about power and accountability, about who gets believed and who faces consequences. And somehow, without planning it, she had become part of something much bigger than herself. As the first light of dawn began to filter through her blinds, Sophia finally drifted off, unaware that across town, police department officials were already gathering for an emergency meeting that would determine Officer Mercer's fate. Sophia woke to the sound of her phone ringing. Sunlight streamed through the gap in her curtains, and for a blissful moment, she forgot about everything that had happened the night before. Then reality crashed back as she saw her mother's name on the screen. "Mom," she answered, her voice still thick with sleep. "Honey, I just saw the video." Her mother's voice was a mix of worry and anger. "Why didn't you call me last night?" "Are you okay?" Sophia sat up in bed, pushing her hair out of her face. "I'm okay, Mom. It was late when I got home from the police station and I didn't want to worry you." "Worry me?" "Sophia, some police officer assaulted you. I'm booking a flight right now." "Mom, you don't have to. I'll be there by this evening. Your father is trying to get time off work, but you know how his boss is. Have you talked to a lawyer yet?" Before Sophia could answer, there was a knock on her bedroom door. Lucia peeked in, holding up her own phone with a meaningful look. "Mom, I need to go. There's a lot happening right now. I'll call you back in a bit, okay?" After promising to keep her mother updated, Sophia ended the call and turned to Lucia. "What is it?" "You need to see this." Lucia handed over her phone, open to a local news website. The headline made Sophia's stomach drop. "Westlake police officer suspended after viral video shows him licking young woman's face." Below the headline was a still from Devon's video, with her face blurred but Officer Mercer's clearly visible. The article mentioned that the officer had been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation, and that the police department would be holding a press conference at noon. "It's everywhere," Lucia said, sitting down on the edge of Sophia's bed. "Local TV news, social media, even some national outlets are picking it up. Devon's video has over 200,000 views now." Sophia stared at the phone, trying to process what this meant. "I never thought it would get this big." Her own phone buzzed with an incoming call, a number she didn't recognize. She hesitated, then answered. "Is this Sophia Chen?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, who's this?" "This is Ellen Zhao from the Westlake Tribune. I was hoping to get your statement about the incident with Officer Mercer last night." Sophia ended the call without answering, her heart racing. Within seconds, the phone rang again, another unfamiliar number. "Turn it off," Lucia advised, taking the phone from Sophia's hands. "At least for now. You don't have to talk to anyone you don't want to." Sophia nodded, feeling suddenly overwhelmed. "What am I supposed to do now?" "I didn't ask for any of this attention. First, you should eat something," Lucia said practically. "Then maybe we should talk to someone who knows how to handle this kind of situation." Over breakfast, which Sophia barely touched, they discussed their options. Devon and Haley came over, bringing coffee and a supportive presence. Devon's phone kept buzzing with notifications about his video. "I can take it down if you want," he offered, but Sophia shook her head. "No, leave it up. People should see what happened." She took a deep breath. "I think I need to talk to a lawyer." Haley's older sister was in her second year of law school, and one quick call later, they had the name of a local attorney who specialized in civil rights cases. Sophia made an appointment for that afternoon, just after the police department's press conference. "I want to watch it," she said firmly when Lucia suggested she might want to avoid the press conference. "I need to know what they're saying." At noon sharp, they gathered around Lucia's laptop. The press conference began with Chief Thomas stepping up to a podium in front of the Westlake Police Department building. His face was grave as he addressed the crowd of reporters. "Yesterday evening, an incident occurred involving one of our officers that falls far below the standards we set for our department," he began. "A video has been circulating online that shows Officer James Mercer engaging in behavior that is completely unacceptable and violates our code of conduct, our training, and basic human decency." Sophia felt a chill run through her as she heard him name Officer Mercer directly. The chief continued, his voice steady but with an undercurrent of controlled anger. "I want to be absolutely clear. The Westlake Police Department does not condone this behavior in any way. Officer Mercer was placed on administrative leave immediately after the incident, and after reviewing the evidence, including body camera footage and witness statements, I have made the decision to terminate his employment, effective immediately." The room erupted with questions from reporters, but the chief held up a hand for silence. In addition, We have referred this case to the district attorney's office for review of potential criminal charges. We are cooperating fully with that investigation. Sophia could hardly believe what she was hearing. Less than 24 hours after the incident, Officer Mercer had been fired. She felt Lucia squeeze her hand. Furthermore, the chief continued, I want to extend a public apology to the young woman involved in this incident. What happened to her was inexcusable, and on behalf of the entire department, I am deeply sorry. This is not who we are, and it is not what we stand for. As the chief took questions from reporters, Captain Rivera stepped up to the podium. She looked directly into the cameras as if she were speaking directly to Sophia. I want to add that during our initial investigation, we discovered that there had been 2 previous complaints filed against Officer Mercer for inappropriate behavior toward young women during traffic stops. These complaints were not properly investigated at the time. This represents a failure in our system that we are addressing immediately. We are reviewing all of our procedures for handling complaints and will be implementing new training and accountability measures. Sophia turned to her friends, stunned. There were other complaints? Other women? Devon shook his head in disgust. And they did nothing until there was video evidence they couldn't ignore. The press conference continued, but Sophia was lost in thought. The knowledge that other women had filed complaints that went nowhere made her both angry and even more determined to see this through. After the press conference ended, Sophia's phone rang again. This time it was Sergeant Walsh. Miss Chen, I wanted to let you know personally about the chief's decision before you heard it from the news, he said, sounding apologetic when Sophia explained that she'd already watched the press conference. We're also arranging protection for you in case you're being harassed by the media or anyone else. Protection? Sophia repeated, surprised. Just a precaution, the sergeant assured her. Officer Torres has volunteered to be your point of contact. She'll be stopping by later today to check on you and provide you with some resources. After thanking him, Sophia ended the call and looked at her friends. I can't believe how quickly all this is happening. It's the video, Devon said. They can't sweep it under the rug when everyone can see exactly what happened. Later that afternoon, Sophia sat in the office of Attorney Grace Lynn, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s whose walls were lined with diplomas and framed newspaper articles about cases she had won. Ms. Lynn listened carefully as Sophia recounted the events of the previous night. First, I want to commend you for your courage, Ms. Lynn said when Sophia finished. Many people wouldn't have filed a complaint, especially against a police officer. I couldn't let him get away with it, Sophia said simply. Ms. Lynn nodded approvingly. The department's swift action is unusual but encouraging. Firing him within 24 hours suggests they're very concerned about public perception and possibly about what might come out in a more extended investigation. What do you mean? Captain Rivera mentioned other complaints that weren't properly investigated. That opens the department up to significant liability. They may be trying to get ahead of a bigger scandal. Ms. Lynn leaned forward. Sophia, you have grounds for a civil lawsuit against both Officer Mercer and potentially the department itself. But I want you to think carefully about what you want to achieve here. Sophia considered the question. I want him to never be able to do this to anyone else, and I want the department to change how they handle complaints like this. Those are good goals, Ms. Lynn said. And a lawsuit might help achieve them. But it would also mean putting yourself in the public eye even more. Are you prepared for that? Before Sophia could answer, her phone buzzed with a text from Lucia. Officer Torres is here to see you. The meeting with Ms. Lynn wrapped up with an agreement to think about the next steps. Sophia left with a folder of information about her rights and options, her mind spinning with possibilities and decisions to be made. When she arrived back at her apartment, Officer Torres was sitting at the kitchen table with Lucia, both of them nursing cups of tea. Torres was again in plain clothes, looking tired but determined. Sophia, she said, standing as Sophia entered. How are you holding up? It's been a lot, Sophia admitted, setting down her bag. But I'm okay. Officer Torres nodded. I wanted to update you personally. Officer Mercer cleared out his locker this morning. He's not taking the termination well. He's claiming it was just a joke and that the department is overreacting because of social media pressure. Sophia felt a flash of anger. A joke? He humiliated me in public, abused his power, and he thinks it was a joke? I know, Torres said, her expression hardening. I've worked with him for 2 years and I never saw this side of him. Or maybe I didn't want to see it. She paused. There's something else you should know. The two women who filed previous complaints have both come forward after seeing your video. They want to tell their stories too. Sophia sank into a chair, the weight of this new information settling on her shoulders. Somehow, her private humiliation had become a catalyst for something much larger. Other women were finding their voices because she had found hers. What happens now? She asked. Now, Officer Torres said, you decide what role you want to play and what comes next. But whatever you choose, you won't be alone. The next morning, Sophia woke to the sound of voices in the living room. For a moment, she lay still, trying to place them. Then she recognized her mother's distinctive laugh, followed by Lucia's voice responding. With a mixture of relief and nervous energy, she got out of bed and padded to the door. Her mother was sitting on the couch, a cup of coffee in her hands, looking tired but alert. She had clearly come straight from the airport to the apartment. Mom, Sophia said, and her mother was on her feet in an instant, wrapping Sophia in a tight hug that smelled of her familiar perfume and the lingering scent of airplane coffee. My brave girl, her mother whispered, holding Sophia at arm's length to examine her face. Are you really okay? I'm getting there, Sophia answered honestly. It helps that they fired him so quickly. Her mother's expression hardened. They should have done more than fire him. That man should be facing charges. He might, Lucia chimed in, bringing more coffee from the kitchen. The district attorney is reviewing the case. Over breakfast, Sophia filled her mother in on everything that had happened since their phone call. The meeting with Attorney Lynn, Officer Torres's visit, and the news that other women had filed complaints against Officer Mercer in the past. This is bigger than just what happened to you, her mother said thoughtfully. This could change how the department handles these kinds of cases. Sophia nodded. That's what I keep thinking about. If I just wanted him fired, that's already done. But what about those other women whose complaints were ignored? What about making sure this doesn't happen again? Her mother reached across the table to squeeze her hand. Whatever you decide to do, your father and I will support you. But don't feel like you have to carry this burden alone. Sophia's phone buzzed with a text from Devon. Channel 5 just ran a story about Mercer. 2 other women interviewed. You should see this. Lucia quickly pulled up the news clip on her laptop. The reporter, a poised woman with serious eyes, stood in front of the police station. Former Officer James Mercer, who was fired yesterday after a video showed him licking a young woman's face during what should have been a routine interaction, has been the subject of previous complaints, according to our sources within the department. 2 women have now come forward to share their experiences. The screen cut to a woman in her 20s, her face partially shadowed to protect her identity. It was during a traffic stop 2 years ago, she explained. He made comments about my appearance, asked if I had a boyfriend, and then insisted on getting my phone number for follow-up questions. When I filed a complaint, they told me it was his word against mine, and without evidence, they couldn't do much. The second woman, shown with her back to the camera, described a similar experience: inappropriate comments, unnecessary physical contact during a pat-down, and a complaint that went nowhere. What's different this time, the reporter continued, is the existence of video evidence that couldn't be ignored or dismissed. Sources tell us that Internal Affairs is now reviewing all complaints filed against officers in the past 5 years to see if other legitimate concerns were mishandled. As the report ended, Sophia sat in stunned silence. Her mother reached for her hand again. You see? Because you spoke up, because your friends recorded what happened, things are already changing. Before Sophia could respond, her phone rang. Attorney Lynn calling. Sophia, have you seen the news this morning? Just now? Yes. The other 2 women who filed complaints against Mercer have contacted me. They want to meet with you. They're considering filing a joint lawsuit against the department for negligence in handling their complaints. Are you interested in talking with them? Sophia looked at her mother, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, she said, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. I'd like to meet them. Later that afternoon, Sophia, her mother, and Attorney Lynn sat in a conference room at Lynn's office. The 2 women from the news report, now introduced as Tanya and Valerie, sat across from them, both looking nervous but determined. First, I want to thank you, Sophia, Tanya said. She was the one who had been shown in partial shadow on the news. If you hadn't filed a complaint, if your friends hadn't recorded what happened, None of this would be coming to light. I almost didn't believe it when I saw the video, Valerie added. She was older than Tanya, maybe in her early 30s. Not that I didn't believe he would do something like that, but that finally there was proof that couldn't be explained away. For the next hour, they shared their experiences. Tanya had been pulled over for a broken taillight. Valerie had been stopped for looking suspicious while jogging in her own neighborhood early in the morning. In both cases, Officer Mercer had been inappropriate, using his position of power to make them uncomfortable and afraid. After I filed my complaint, nothing happened, Tanya explained. A few weeks later, I saw him patrolling my neighborhood. He drove past my house 3 times that day. I was terrified. When I complained, the sergeant I spoke to actually suggested that maybe I was too sensitive or misinterpreted his actions, Valerie said, her voice tight with controlled anger. As if I couldn't tell the difference between professional behavior and harassment. Attorney Lynn listened carefully, taking notes. The department's failure to properly investigate these complaints shows a pattern of negligence. They had warning signs about Officer Mercer's behavior and chose to ignore them. That creates liability. What exactly would a lawsuit accomplish? Sophia's mother asked. Several things, Lynn explained. Financial compensation for the emotional distress caused, of course. But more importantly, we could push for structural changes in how complaints are handled. Independent review of complaints, better training, maybe even civilian oversight. And it would send a message to other departments that ignoring these kinds of complaints can be costly. Sophia had been quiet, taking it all in. Now she looked at Tanya and Valerie. Were you scared to come forward even after everything that's happened? They both nodded. Terrified, Valerie admitted. Police have a lot of power in this community. But seeing how quickly they fired him once there was video evidence, that gave me hope that maybe things could be different. And seeing you stand up to him, Tanya added. That gave me courage. The weight of their words settled on Sophia. She thought about how random it all seemed. If Devin hadn't been recording at that exact moment, if Officer Torres hadn't intervened, if the video hadn't gone viral, would anything have changed? As they were wrapping up the meeting, Officer Torres called. Sophia, I wanted to let you know that the district attorney has decided to file charges against Mercer. Assault and official misconduct. They're issuing a warrant for his arrest today. The news spread quickly through the room after Sophia shared it. There were tears, hugs, a sense of vindication that none of them had expected to feel so soon. Outside the office building, a small group of reporters had gathered, somehow having gotten wind of the meeting. Sophia froze at the sight of the cameras, but Attorney Lynn stepped forward protectively. My clients have no comment at this time, she said firmly. Please respect their privacy. As they made their way through the crowd, a reporter called out, Sophia, do you feel responsible for bringing down Officer Mercer? The question caught her off guard. Did she? The events of the past few days had moved so quickly, she'd hardly had time to process her own feelings, let alone consider the broader impact of what had happened. Back at the apartment, Sophia's phone continued to buzz with notifications, messages of support from friends and strangers alike, news alerts about developments in the case, and even a few interview requests from national outlets. The story was growing beyond Westlake, becoming part of a larger conversation about police accountability and abuse of power. You don't have to do any interviews, her mother reminded her. You don't owe anyone your story. I know, Sophia said. But maybe telling it could help change things. Maybe it could help other people find the courage to speak up. That evening, as Sophia sat on the balcony of her apartment watching the sunset, Devin and Lucia joined her with takeout food and supportive company. The university paper wants to interview you, Devin said. They're doing a piece on student activism and standing up to authority. Sophia smiled at the thought. Is that what I am now? An activist? You're whatever you want to be, Lucia said. But you've definitely started something important. As they ate and talked, Sophia's phone buzzed with another call, this time from Captain Rivera. Miss Chen, I wanted to update you personally. Officer Mercer turned himself in an hour ago. He's been processed and released on bail, but he's facing serious charges. And there's something else you should know. The chief has asked me to head a new task force to review and reform how we handle complaints against officers. We're going to be making real changes, and we'd like your input. After the call ended, Sophia looked out at the darkening sky, feeling a complex mix of emotions. The past 3 days had transformed her life in ways she never could have anticipated. What had begun as a simple birthday celebration in the park had become something much bigger, not just about her own experience, but about challenging a system that had failed too many people for too long. "Are you okay?" Devin asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Sophia nodded slowly. "I think I am. For the first time since it happened, I feel like something good might come out of all this." As night fell over the city, lights began to twinkle in windows across the skyline. Somewhere out there, other people were finding the courage to tell their stories because she had told hers. Somewhere, policies were being rewritten because she had refused to stay silent. The thought filled her with a quiet sense of purpose that just days ago, she never could have imagined feeling 1 month later. Sophia sat in the back row of the community center, watching as people filed in for the town hall meeting. The room buzzed with conversation. Camera crews from local news stations set up in the corners, and city officials arranged their materials at the long table at the front. "Nervous?" Lucia whispered beside her. Sophia nodded slightly. "A little. I didn't expect so many people would come." The past month had been a whirlwind. After meeting with Tanya and Valerie, Sophia had agreed to join their lawsuit against the police department. Attorney Lynn had filed the paperwork the following week, and the news had made headlines across the state. What had begun as a single viral video had sparked a movement for police accountability in Westlake. Chief Thomas entered the room, followed by Captain Rivera and several other officers in uniform. Among them was Officer Torres, who caught Sophia's eye and gave her a small nod of acknowledgement. The relationship between them had evolved into something unexpected, not quite friendship, but a mutual respect born from the difficult circumstances that had brought them together. The mayor, a tall woman with practical short hair and sensible shoes, called the meeting to order. "Thank you all for coming tonight. As you know, recent events have brought to light serious concerns about oversight and accountability within our police department. We're here to listen to community input on proposed reforms and to share the steps already being taken." Sophia felt a flutter of anticipation in her stomach. This meeting was happening because of what had happened to her, because she had spoken up, because her friends had recorded it, because the community had responded with outrage and demands for change. Chief Thomas stepped up to the microphone. "Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that we failed to properly address complaints of officer misconduct in the past. That failure led to the incident involving Officer Mercer, which should never have happened. For that, I apologize to the entire community, and especially to the women who filed complaints that weren't taken seriously." His eyes scanned the room, and Sophia knew he was looking for her, Tanya, and Valerie. She sat up straighter, meeting his gaze when it found her. "We've made immediate changes to our complaint process," the chief continued. "All complaints are now reviewed by a 3-person panel that includes Captain Rivera, a civilian representative, and a member of our Community Oversight Committee. We've also implemented mandatory retraining for all officers on appropriate conduct during civilian interactions." Captain Rivera took the microphone next. "We've reviewed every complaint filed against an officer in the past 5 years. As a result, 2 additional officers have been placed on administrative leave pending further investigation, and all officers are now required to wear body cameras that cannot be turned off during civilian interactions." The meeting continued, with city officials outlining additional reforms: an independent review board for use of force incidents, expanded mental health training, community listening sessions in every neighborhood. But the most powerful moments came when citizens stepped up to the microphone to share their own experiences. An elderly man described being treated roughly during a traffic stop. A young mother told how officers had dismissed her when she reported harassment. A teenager recounted being followed through his own neighborhood for no apparent reason. Each story added to the picture of a department that had lost touch with the community it was meant to serve. When it was Tanya's turn to speak, her voice shook at first, but grew stronger as she continued. "For 2 years I've been afraid every time I saw a police car in my rearview mirror. Not because I was doing anything wrong, but because of what one officer did and how the department ignored my complaint. This isn't about attacking all police officers. It's about making sure the ones who abuse their power are held accountable." Valerie spoke next, her professional demeanor masking the emotion in her voice. "When I filed my complaint, I was made to feel like I was the problem, like I was overreacting or misunderstanding what happened. No one should feel that way when they're trying to report misconduct. The changes being proposed tonight are important, but they're just the beginning. Throughout it all, Sophia sat quietly, listening. She had decided not to speak publicly at the meeting. Her story had already been told through the video, through news reports, through the lawsuit. Tonight was about hearing other voices, about understanding how widespread the problem was, and about pushing for lasting change. After the formal presentations ended, people broke into smaller discussion groups. Sophia found herself approached by a group of young women about her age. "We just wanted to say thank you," one of them said. "What happened to you was awful, but the way you handled it, it gave a lot of us courage to speak up about things we've experienced too." Another woman nodded. "I filed a complaint last week about an officer who followed me home. Before all this happened, I probably would have just stayed quiet." The words touched Sophia deeply. In the most difficult moments of the past month, she had sometimes questioned whether putting herself in the public eye had been worth it. Now, looking at these women, she had her answer. As the meeting wound down, Sophia stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. The evening was cool, stars just beginning to appear in the darkening sky. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Officer Torres. "Quite a turnout," Torres said, coming to stand beside her. Sophia nodded. "I never expected any of this when I filed that complaint. Sometimes it takes one person standing up to change a whole system." Torres was quiet for a moment. "I wanted you to know that I've been assigned to help train new recruits on proper conduct. I'm using your case as an example, not just of what officers shouldn't do, but of why taking complaints seriously matters." "Do you think anything will really change?" Sophia asked. "It already has," Torres replied simply, "and not just policy changes. There's a different feeling in the department now. Officers who've always done the right thing feel more supported in speaking up when they see something wrong." They stood in companionable silence for a moment before Torres spoke again. "The district attorney called me today. Mercer's attorney is trying to negotiate a plea deal. They don't want this to go to trial." "What kind of deal?" "No jail time, but he'd plead guilty to misdemeanor assault and official misconduct. He'd lose his law enforcement certification permanently. He'd never be able to work as a police officer anywhere in the country again. And he'd have to complete community service and mandatory counseling." Sophia considered this. Part of her wanted Mercer to face the harshest possible consequences, but another part just wanted to ensure he could never do to anyone else what he had done to her. "What do you think I should do?" she asked. Torres shook her head. "I can't tell you that. It's your decision. But whatever you choose, it won't undo the good that's already come from you speaking up." Back inside, Sophia rejoined Lucia and Devon, who had been talking with Attorney Lynn. "There you are," Lynn said. "I was just telling your friends about the department's settlement offer." "They want to settle the lawsuit?" Sophia was surprised. "Already?" Lynn nodded. "They're offering a substantial financial settlement to you, Tanya and Valerie. But more importantly, they're agreeing to implement all the reforms discussed tonight, plus a few additional ones we requested. They'll create a permanent civilian oversight committee with real authority, and they'll fund a special training program for officers on recognizing and preventing harassment and abuse of power." "Why would they agree to all that so quickly?" Devon asked. "Because they know they'd lose in court," Lynn explained. "The evidence is too clear, not just of Mercer's actions, but of the department's failure to address previous complaints. They want to show they're taking responsibility and making changes." Sophia looked around the room, at the community members still engaged in passionate discussion, at Captain Rivera listening intently to an elderly woman's concerns, at the wall where someone had posted a large sheet of paper titled "Community Priorities for Policing." "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now," Lynn said, "you decide if the settlement offers enough meaningful change to be worth accepting. You decide if you want to keep fighting, or if you're ready to close this chapter and move forward." Later that night, Sophia sat on the balcony of her apartment, wrapped in a blanket against the cool evening air. Her mother had returned home the week before, but they spoke daily. Her father had come for a weekend visit, bringing her childhood teddy bear and his quiet, steady support. Her phone lit up with a text from Tanya. "Whatever you decide about the settlement, thank you for everything. You changed things for all of us." A few minutes later, Valerie texted too. "Just left the town hall. People are still talking. This isn't going away. Real change is happening. Sophia looked out at the city lights, thinking about how much had changed in just over a month. Officer Mercer had lost his job instantly after the video went viral. He was facing criminal charges and would never work in law enforcement again. The police department was implementing reforms that might have taken years to achieve otherwise. And most importantly, people who had been afraid to speak up were finding their voices. She couldn't undo what had happened to her in the park that night. The memory of that violation would always be with her. But she had refused to let it define her. Instead, she had used it to help create something positive, a movement for accountability and change that would protect others from experiencing similar abuses of power. As she looked at the stars above the city, Sophia felt a sense of peace she hadn't expected to find so soon. What had begun as one of the worst moments of her life had become a catalyst for growth, not just for her personally, but for her entire community. Sometimes it took one person standing up and saying, "This is not okay," to begin changing a broken system. She was proud to have been that person, and even more proud of everyone who had stood beside her along the way. Tomorrow she would call Attorney Lynn and discuss the settlement offer. Tomorrow she would think about next steps and future plans, but tonight she would simply sit with the knowledge that sometimes, even from the darkest moments, something good can grow.